Good afternoon, good evening, I should say. I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's licensing subcommittee. Before we begin proceedings, I would like to outline the protocol for remote licensing subcommittee hearings, which has been previously circulated to all applicants. Can I ask that you only speak when invited to do so by the chair? If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Please ensure that your mics are muted when you are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic at any stage, and this is to ensure the meeting is conducted effectively. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, please refer to the page number. If you are having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function to alert the meeting, and we will provide assistance. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Once all applications have been considered, any remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so that councillors will have the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on each application they have heard. Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. I would, however, like to advise that if you contact the licensing service tomorrow morning, you should be able to receive a skeleton decision. Okay, at this point, I would like to invite members to elect a chair. Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Smith.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this licensing committee meeting. Let me just get to the date. My computer's stalled. 1 second. Bear with me. Yeah, Tuesday the 9th of February, 7 o'clock. Okay, so the agenda is in the agenda pack. I presume everyone's got it. We've done the election of chair. Any apologies for absence at all? None received. Okay, great.
Received by me, Chair.
Sorry?
None received by me, Chair, no.
Okay, brilliant. Any declarations of interest? None? Councillor Patrick?
None.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I think that's it. I think we move on to the hearing procedure. I'll just go through what happens. I think the first item that we're dealing with is Star Market on Upper Clapton Road. So the licensing officer will outline the report. They've got 5 minutes for that. The applicant will present their case in support of their application. That's 5 minutes. Responsible authorities, of which today I believe we have licensing. The police have withdrawn on this one, and environmental health, I believe, is not here. Is that right? Can someone clarify that one?
That's correct. They're not present. They were invited to attend, but they're not present.
Okay, great. And then any other persons? There's no other persons today, I believe. Is that the case as well? Yeah, no other persons for this one?
That's correct.
Yeah, brilliant. And then we go on to step 6, which is a discussion over 15 minutes, and then closing remarks, 10 minutes, any final clarifications, which we have 5 minutes on, and then we ask the various parties to leave whilst we deliberate the case at hand. So I would like to invite the licensing officer, please, to outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for 70 to 76 Upper Clapton Road to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption of the premises as stated in the agenda. Police have withdrawn their representation based on agreed condition. Only licensing and environmental enforcement representation remains. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair. Okay,
great. I just forgot. I would like just to run through who everyone is very briefly. Sorry about that. Apologies. We'll just do that quickly. So I'm Councillor Smith, Councillor in Stoke Newington Ward. Natalie?
Hello, I am Natalie Williams, Governance Services Officer.
Suba,
I'm Subhashri Ramana, Principal Licensing Officer.
Amanda,
Hello, I'm Amanda North, solicitor, supporting members this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Dads.
Yes, good evening. I'm David Daz. I'm counsel for the applicant.
Great, thank you. And Engin. Is Engin there?
Hello, David.
Hi. Can you just say who you are?
My name is Engin Akin. I was applying for a premises license for number 13 Stock Newington Road.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Chewett.
David Chewett, Team Leader Licensing Technical Support, make a
Thank-
representation on behalf of Licensing Authority.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
Yes, Guy Hicks, representing Engin Akin, licensing consultant. Thank you.
Thank you. Karishma.
Yep, good evening, everyone. I'm the trainee solicitor observing the meeting today.
Thank you very much. And Mario is our technical assistant. Thank you, Mario, for all you do. And then we have Councillor Patrick.
Hello, Councillor Sharon Patrick, Kings Park Ward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I think, have I missed anybody? I got everybody? Yep. So just bear with us, folks. I can't often see everybody. So if somebody's waving, just let me know. I'm happy for you to let me know if I missed anybody.
Have I missed something, Councillor Smith? Have we got the applicant for this one?
Yeah, that's Engin.
No, he's the applicant for the next one.
Oh, right, okay.
I think Mr.
Sure.
Dads just represents the applicant in the first matter, and his client is probably with him.
Yes,
Okay.
my client is on another screen, Mr. Chairman and Councillor Patrick. So they're sitting next to me virtually. So that's why
Right.
you can't see them.
I
Okay,
was say
great.
Mr. Engines for Stoke Newington.
Okay, so if the applicant would like to present their case, I presume that's you, Mr. Dads.
Yes. Good evening, Councillor Patrick, Councillor Smith. I appear here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is next to me on a screen virtually, and the application which is before you is fairly self-explanatory. I understand that you've read the agenda and you would have seen the application. It's in effect an existing licensed premises that desires to expand into next door premises, which used to be, I believe, a William Hill. That no longer trades. So we are, in effect, are going into that premises, and we will be. Sorry, I do apologise. Do I need to pause for a minute? I don't know if Councillor Patrick needs some more time, because obviously I can see Councillor Patrick eating. So I don't want to be rude, Councillor Patrick, but obviously it's putting me off slightly where I can, because you're right in the middle of my screen. So it's just how it is.
Sorry, I've finished eating now, but I'm sorry. But time I finish work and Chinese meeting start, but I've finished eating now.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. I don't mind pausing for a minute because I know what it's like. I've had to do
No,
this.
no, I've finished.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, could I just start again, if you don't mind? It's only that it was just on my main screen.
Okay, yep. I'll start the clock.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Patrick. Right, so this is an application. We're moving next door into William Hill. That licence has now gone as a gaming centre. We are a premises and a business established over 10 years. We normally are licensed to 11. With the expanded business, they've sought my assistance. We are seeking to be licensed Sunday through to Thursday midnight, Friday and Saturday 1 o'clock. We did ask for extra time on New Year's Eve. The police said if we withdrew that, they would not object. So we withdrew the non-standing timing. So the police service, having regard to the application, have not raised any objections on grounds of crime disorder. It's also my understanding that Environmental Health has not raised any objections on grounds of public nuisance, except for, I believe, Environmental Enforcement, which appears to be a different service, has raised a number of questions regarding litter and waste management. And their representations, you can see that they've asked for a number of things. For example, waste bins for smoking cigarettes because of the smoking ban. It looks like their representation was written for a licensed pub or licensed premises, not an off license. And I was going to ask them questions tonight. Why have they written it in this way? It doesn't seem to be conducive to an off license. I've never seen these before for an off license. In addition to that, what they're seeking, the refuse license or waste certificate, is under different separate legislation, and one should avoid, where appropriate, duplication of other primary legislation. So these conditions are not appropriate under the Licensing Act in any event, but certainly for an off license premises. And obviously they're not here tonight, so we can't see clarification why they seem to have put in a representation for a pub rather than an off license. In relation to the Licensing Act, you'll be aware the burden on this application will be for the licensing authority to demonstrate that we will undermine the licensing objectives. The burden places fully on them, not us, because it's not an accumulative impact. They'll have to demonstrate review with primary evidence that we would undermine the licensing objectives. In regards to their representation, they've not provided any evidence. They seek to rely on what appears on the information before me, policy. So in other words, setting out that it's against policy. But as you'll be aware, Mr. Chairman, and your legal advisor will advise you, there's case law that says policy is not grounds alone to object to a licence. Each application must be judged on its own merits. It's about promotion of the licensing objectives. The burden is actually on the licensing authority this evening to demonstrate to you on the balanced probability that they have primary evidence that this premises would undermine the licensing objectives. And because in their representation they haven't provided any, I don't see how they can do that. Moreover, they can amplify the representation, but can't add anything new this evening. So I don't know how they're going to overcome that obstacle. But in any event, the statutory guidance gives you a bit of a lead in these types of cases where at 9.14 and 9.15 of the statutory guidance, there's a couple of paragraphs regarding licensing authorities and what they're expected or not expected to be doing. But if I could just, if you indulge me, I'll just read the 9.15, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you have 1 minute left.
Thank you. It says, it also reasonable for licensing authorities to expect that other responsible authorities should intervene on the basis of the intervention falls within their remit. So in other words, you would expect the police should make representations regarding crime disorder, and it was reasonable to expect that the local authority exercising environmental health function would make representations under that. So therefore, neither of them have, and I believe that they'd have a statutory duty to do so. And under your policy, which I've just changed the screen, under LP4, it does actually say that evidence from the police and public health would suggest alcohol in certain areas should be restricted or could have a negative impact. But in this case, they have not said that and not provided any evidence contrary to that. And actually, I would go one step further and say, following the principles of Daniel Waite, you have to take weight that they haven't made representation. And in other words, they would be duty bound to object if they felt the licensing objective would be undermined.
Okay.
I do want to say more, but I'll stop there. Maybe through questions I can answer more.
Yeah, okay. Brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Daz.
Thank you.
That's great. So we can now move on to the responsible authorities, in which case, I think in this case, it's licensing. Mr. Jewett.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll keep it very brief so we can get to that discussion, please. But essentially, I'll make a representation as I'm concerned that the proposed hours for the supply of alcohol could have a negative impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives, and in particular, the prevention of public nuisance And I think this is because the application would increase the hours for the supply of alcohol at a low cost late into the night and into the early hours of the morning at the weekends. I've got no concern about the premises being expanded into the neighbouring unit. As I've made reference to, there's already a licence at this particular location, then it's just for the single unit. So we welcome the fact that the applicant seeks to enlarge his premises to create a larger space and potentially create additional jobs, etc. And so that's welcome, but we do just have those concerns about the hours for the proposed hours for the sale of alcohol, as I've said, that low cost alcohol and the hours that could potentially have a negative impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives. I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as there aren't any other persons here today, we can move straight into the discussion phase, where we have 15 minutes. And I'd like to offer Councillor Patrick the opportunity to ask some questions.
Thank you. Perhaps you could tell us, you say, Mr. Dadds, that your client was asking for the extra time, and this won't have any effect on the licensing objectives. But we normally find the later that premises are open and the longer into the night, that this does have an effect on the licensing objectives and encourages antisocial behaviour. Why, if we granted this licence, why wouldn't this be the case in your client's premises?
Well, that's a very good question, Councillor Patrick. And what I would say to you is that obviously each application must be judged on its own merits, as you all know, under the statutory guidance of 1.17. In addition to that, why I say it's not just me that says that. It's actually the police, I believe, that says that, because under 2.1 of the statutory guidance, it says licensing authority should look to the police as the main source of advice on crime disorder. And under 9.14 and 9.15, it also says you should look to environmental health within their expertise, and they've raised no objections. So it's not only us saying that we believe we won't undermine it, the police and the environmental health both have in effect agreed, because they haven't raised any objection. But you're putting the burden on me, although I've answered the question. In fact, the burden is on David Chewett, because we've had his representation and environmental about waste. We wouldn't be here. So the burden is on him, and he has said that he has concern, but he has not provided any evidence of any issues in the area, any crime disorder, any antisocial behaviour, no reference to the pub next door, or even the 24-hour off licence down the road. There's no evidence that they are causing any issues, or the neighbours have got any issues. No councillor, no residents, no residents association, no police, no environmental health. We believe the licensing objectives will be promoted.
Mr. Chair, do you want to come back on some of those points?
I guess what Mr. Dadds has said is correct. We've had a conversation about it yesterday. There is a pub next, very close by, Crooked Billet pub. There is a 24-hour off licence a bit further up Upper Clacton Road, further to the north of the premises. But it's just that concern with the availability of late night alcohol and our experience in that. But I think it is right to say that we don't have any specific evidence linked to this particular premises, but the concern is a general one.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and I thank Mr. Chewett for his candour. He says he has no specific evidence, but I'd go one step further. There is no evidence that the shop just, I think, about 200 or 300 yards down the road, 24 hours, doesn't cause any crime disorder. So, you know, there is availability if people want it down the road, but likewise, they can come to us if you grant us the licence. There is no evidence of any crime disorder in this area or any issues arising in this area. No objections from anyone else. It's purely on policy, and policy alone does not do it for Mr. Chair, I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Patrick, anything else?
Yeah.
No. I mean, obviously the sticking point here is on hours, isn't it? You've got core hours to 11. You want 12 Monday to Thursday. Saturday to 12. You want to 1, and then Sunday you want to go to 12. So you're asking for another hour and a half on a Sunday. I mean, what is your position in regards to compromising at all on the hours there? I mean, are you willing to compromise even half an hour?
Well, could I be really cheeky and say, and just reply to you and say, well, I actually don't agree that the sticking point of the hours. I will answer your question about hours. The sticking point for me is actually David Chewett not having any evidence, and that the burden is on him. And if he doesn't have the evidence, the license must be granted. The burden is on him, not on me. And it's not about negotiating. However, that being said, if you are not with me that he has no evidence and that you don't believe my legal argument is correct, then of course, if you want to pull it back half an hour, you can do that if you believe it's appropriate. And obviously, we're not have nothing or have the 11 o'clock or have half an hour less. Of course, we would take it, but that we wouldn't be satisfied with that, because I'm not being rude. That the sticking point is actually the licensing authority stands in our way. And the only reason they stand in the way is they raise an objection based on policy, no specific evidence. And they have to demonstrate that we will undermine the licensing objective based on primary evidence, not just on policy grounds alone. And you've got evidence in front of you from the police, in effect, from the police and the Environment Health will be duty bound to object. So I think the sticking point actually is Mr. Chewett and his lack of evidence, and only objecting on grounds of policy, and policy alone doesn't win. The case law for that, which your learned legal advisor will know, is the Westminster City Council and Tyrion PLC, which was the Royal Courts of Justice, 29th of May 2002 at the High Court, Queen's Bench Division, that says in effect policy alone is not grounds for objection.
Okay. Mr. Chewett, do you want to come back on that again?
I think I could only really reiterate what I've already said. I mean, Mr. Dadds has made his position very clear, so I don't see that, you know, a 30-minute compromise or any sort of amendment to the hours would really change the position. It's just that it's really the concern that, you know, any hours beyond 11 p.m. could have that potential for negative impact, whether that be public nuisance, ASB, etc. But then obviously it's you know, if I'm being asked if there's specific evidence related to this particular site, then I can't say there is.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to chip in here at all?
No.
Councillor Patrick?
Sorry, no.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we know where everybody stands on this. I think we should just go to closing remarks now, please. Mr. Chewett, do you want to just have a closing remark here?
I could only just go over it again, really, Chair. It's the hours for supply of alcohol slightly outside of those set out in LP4 with different policy. The concern is that the late night supply of alcohol could have a negative impact on the promotion of the licensing objective. However, as Mr. Dadds has said, and I'm sure he'll say in his closing remarks, that I've not presented any specific evidence, so that should be taken on board when you make your decision.
Okay, great, thank you. And Mr. Dadds?
Yes, in summary, obviously any decision you make must be based on evidence, primary evidence, and principally, and on the balanced probability. The objectives of the committee is to promote the licensing objectives. There's no cumulative impact in this area. There was no responsible authorities, i.e. the police or environmental health, that would address you on crime, disorder and public nuisance, they would be the primary responsible authorities. They raised none, and in fact, the police did raise one. We made slight amendment. They withdrew, knowing clearly the application. There was no other persons in made representations like a residents association, residents, councillors. The location is near another premises that offers 24 hours without any cause of concern, otherwise the police would have objected. It's on an arterial road, A107. It's a well-established premises over 10 years. We're going into another licensed premises, the bookmakers, so perhaps it's a good thing that that's going. We're going into that. We're creating and investing in local retail, creating jobs. We believe that the licensing objectives would be promoted. And as I say, the sticking point, using your word, is that the licensing authority agree that they've not provided any evidence of the location, any crimes of disorder, any evidence of antisocial behaviour resulting in this application. And in fact, they are not, with the greatest respect to Mr. Jewett, he is not the police or the environmental health with the expertise which your statutory guidance steers you to. The primary source of advice on these matters is the police service and environmental health, and both have not objected to this licence as applied for. So on that basis, I ask that the application be granted, Mr. Chair, and then Councillor Patrick.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So any points of clarification from anyone? No?
No.
Okay, well, I think we can basically say that we'll now consider it. So we just ask those parties to leave that are interested here.
Yes, and do I return or do I get the decision later? Sorry, can I just clarify that?
Yeah, you get the decision later. I believe you can phone in the morning.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Mr. Jewett.
Thank you. See ya.
Good night.
Bye, David.
Bye.
Okay, so now we move on to the next one, which is the ground floor of 13 Stoke Newington Road. If we could basically get the licensing officer to outline the case, please, for this one.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act for 13 Stoke Newington Road for the hours as stated in the agenda. Only licensing representations remains. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And if we could have the applicant, please, if you would like to present your case.
Thank you, Chair. The venue's previously been in operation as a barber for the last 20 or so years. It's located in a ground floor space, which is situated in Stoke Newington Road N16. The road's a busy road leading to the centre of Dalston and the area known as the Strip. It's within the current boundary of the Dalston Special Policy Area, and there are a number of residential properties. It is also part of the same building that houses 2 live music and entertainment venues with a combined capacity of, in the area, of 1,000, possibly over 1,000 people. It's a very small section of this audience that we will target as customers should this application be successful. The intention is to offer pre and post-show services to those attending those live music gigs. The applicant is keen to be a benefit to the community and not a burden, and therefore the local residents will be made aware of the dedicated phone number to call in the unlikely event that they are being directly disturbed by the venue. The applicant has made it clear in the application that there will be no DJs, only background level music to allow face-to-face conversation to continue. It will also ensure all windows and doors remain closed, save for when customers access and egress the building. A strong dispersal policy, as well as a policy relating to the outside and smoking area, have been written and submitted within the application, and these documents will be fluid and subject to change as dictated by circumstance in order to make them as good a fit as possible with the operation. So the venue itself is currently vacant premises, previously used as a bar, as I've said. It will operate as a small seated-only table service venue. Food will be on offer in the form of hot and cold meze-style plates of Middle Eastern dishes from Iran, Afghanistan and Morocco. The food will be available at all times whilst alcohol is being sold, and that is a condition presented on the in the application. Chairs and tables will remain in place as part of the floor plan of the venue. Mr. Aiken has no intention of offering a vertical drinking style establishment, and the bar area will be very small with only a select number of beers and wines available. There'll be no private hire of the venue for birthday parties. Again, this is a condition within the pack. Mr. Aitken will remain in strict control of the venue's operation and will do so in accordance with the stringent selection of conditions and policies that are before you. The applicant, a personal licence holder, has a number of years' experience within the industry. He's aware of the licensing objectives, their significance, and his role in ensuring their compliance. For this reason, there are policies and conditions drafted that, should the application be successful, will be implemented in full. These, alongside the range of conditions offered, will assist him and the venue staff in operating successfully without negatively impacting on the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll write to make representation in relation to this application, as I've concerns that the proposed activity could have a negative impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives. And this is given the nature of the surrounding area and a setting that of where the premises is. And so, of course, it's located within the Dalston Special Policy Area, which is an area highlighted as suffering from a cumulative impact caused by the concentration of licensed premises in the local area. I'll refer you to LP10 within the Council's policy, which sets out what the special policies actually say specifically. What I do know is that the applicant has provided some supporting information and supporting statements and documentation that accompanied the application. This consisted of dispersal policy, outdoor management policy, and smoking policy. But however, despite this, there are still those concerns that this additional premises, obviously as a barber shop, it wasn't previously licensed, but it would, if you're minded to grant, become an additional premises in this area. So that is the concern, that an additional premises within the SPA could have that negative impact. So I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the discussion period. I think we have 15 minutes for that. Again, Councillor Patrick, I'd like to start off with questions from you, please.
Sorry, text me a minute to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I hear what Mr. Stewart's saying, and to the applicant. This is a special policy area, and can you tell us why that your premises won't add to the cumulative impact of the area? I know it looks quite small. Perhaps you confirm the number of seats. We've got 23 on our from the plan, but perhaps you confirm how many people you're having seated in the premises, and tell me why you won't affect the cumulative impact. For now.
Chair. Yep. Okay, so I think on the application it's capacity of 35, safe for staff inside. It is a very small premises. As I've already said, it sits between two really large premises, probably the biggest, certainly in Dalston, that hold over 1,000 people. We're not going to be a destination venue. The idea is that we capture a very small part of a crowd that are already coming into the area, would be my first point. My second point would be that since the policy and the SPA came into existence, there are, even prior to COVID, there are premises that have closed, such as, the name escapes me now, which is typical, really. The name escaped me right at this very point. Alibi. There you go. I knew it was there somewhere. So Alibi's closed, 200 odd people. You know, we're bringing 35 into the area, of which most of those, if not all, will be, you know, pre-music drinks, pre-music meal, or post-music drinks and meals. And the other point I would make is that the policy, really, that the issues that start to occur due to saturation are generally post-midnight, if not 1 o'clock in the morning sort of time, you know, when they really start to become, certainly from a crime and disorder perspective, an ASB. And we have, you know, done our best to sit within policy hours. We have sat within policy hours, so that we're closed, you know, before we get to that time of night where, you know, ASB, et cetera, really starts to become an issue. And of course, the police aren't here because they didn't want to make an objection. they were happy. They didn't even ask for any changes to the license. They accepted it as it was proposed and made no objection to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You've just raised a point there. You said for drinks. I understand that this is a restaurant and that alcohol is only to be served with meals. Perhaps we could tighten this up, Chair, by having a clause that alcohol would only be served with substantial table meals to make sure that this is a restaurant, as what the application is for.
Sorry, Chair, it hasn't been applied for as a restaurant. I think it's quite clear in the proposed conditions and the proposal that it's not actually a restaurant. Whilst there are conditions for food to always be available, the actual operation of the venue, the size of the venue doesn't allow for it. Size of the kitchen doesn't allow for it to be a restaurant as such. It is a bar with food available. But to try and allay fears and satisfy the council, police, etc., we've made sure that it's conditioned so that it's seated only, waitress service. There's no vertical drinking. So food is available, but it's not actually a restaurant, and it never was proposed that it would be a restaurant. I hope that clarifies for you, Councillor Patrick.
Just on are you finished, Councillor Patrick? Can I chip in here?
Yeah. Yes, do, sir.
Yeah, just on condition 13 that you mentioned, Mr. Hicks. That's on page 7 of the pack. It says food and alcohol will be by waitress service only. Patrons will be seated and there will be no bar service. You did mention that just now. Could we add into that, would it be possible to add in that patrons will be seated at all times?
Yeah, I'm looking at Mr. Aitken, but we're happy for that. It's not a vertical drinking establishment. The idea is that people come in and sit and either eat or they drink or both.
That's fine. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's great. Councillor Patrick, how do you feel about that? Does that help?
I'm just looking at what the yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, can I just mention there was a condition that you've been sent. I don't know whether or not that you need to consider that condition at all or not.
Yeah, let me just have a quick look.
Yeah, whether or not that's appropriate to ask the applicant whether or not that's necessary.
Just give me a second. I'll just read this out for everyone. So intoxicating liquor shall not be sold, supplied or consumed otherwise than to persons who are taking a substantial meal from the menu, and that the consumption of alcohol by such persons is ancillary to taking such meals. The supply of alcohol shall be by waitress service only, which you've kind of got. I mean, as Councillor Patrick mentioned earlier on, a substantial meal these days can be a Scotch egg, apparently. So I don't know how that sounds.
Chair, that to my mind would make it a full restaurant condition, and it simply isn't a restaurant. The
other issue that I've kind of got with this is that you've got seating for 23, but yet you say the capacity is 35. How does that work?
We'd ensure there's seating in there for 35. I'm looking at Mr. Aitken, who is obviously liaising with his architect and planner.
Because on the plan,
there's only that.
23 seats on that plan.
Perhaps they're going to get cosy.
not in today's case.
I heard that. Do you want to repeat it? I don't think your client was present when that was said. Could you want to repeat it?
Sorry, say that again, Amanda.
I don't think Mr. Engen was present when Mr. Hicks was mentioning that point just now.
So we've got concerns about the numbers, Mr. Engen. Looking at the plan and counting the seats that we think is available on the plan, we count 23, and maybe it could be a couple more, but we're told that you're applying for 35, so we just wondered how you get to 35 without any vertical drinking. excluding staff.
I think there's a proper misunderstanding there. Can I just check the planning? 1 second, please.
Yeah, Chair, can I dive in there?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I mean, is it something that we could agree that if we were successful, that the capacity would be 35 and all 35 people would be seated?
Well, in theory.
And we'll resubmit a plan to ensure that, you know, the plan that's attached to the application, sorry, to the license, if we're successful, shows seating for 35 people.
Yeah, we just want to find out how you come up with a figure of 35.
The reason we said it was 35, so I think in the planning it says 23, but there's another 2 tables and there's going to be 5 staff working there. So we wanted to say 35 with the staff.
Right.
So
with the staff.
Yes,
Right.
because we're gonna have 5 or 6 people working in the kitchen. We're gonna have a waiter. So I wanted to make sure I don't want to get over capacity. So I'll make sure 35 with the staff together.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that for such a small venue, for quite a large number of staff serving food with a waitress. I mean, that does speak to me of a restaurant type of situation.
Sir, because we're gonna have Afghan and Iran food, we're gonna have probably 1 chef coming in the morning, and because it's gonna be long hours, one is gonna be at night time, and it's gonna be 1 people washing dish and then waiter. So we have to get involved with the staff, with the part time and the full time. So you have to have, because it's long hours, it's gonna be like a 5 staff minimum or 4 or 5 staff minimum down there.
Yeah.
I think we could have set 35 for the venue, including staff, Chair.
Okay.
But I am concerned that this in a special policy area is actually a bar. As you said, I had the misconception that it was going to be a restaurant. If apart from the joke about the Scotch egg, I wonder if Mr. Engine would accept an amendment that alcohol will only be served with food rather than necessarily a substantial meal, so that people will have to buy some food and a drink, which will actually probably add to your profits in the long run. They'd have to buy a couple of mezzanine with their beer.
No, that's right. Because I can't be on the bar because I have to sell food as well. Otherwise, it's very hard for me to survive in that area because I'm gonna have a rent. Right? So I will be serving mezes and the food with the alcohol. That's okay with me. That's no problem.
So
okay, so we could amend. We could amend 13, could we? Alcohol will only be served with food by waiter, waitress service only, and patrons will be seated at all times, and there'll be no bar service. How does that sound?
Well, I'm not gonna have a bar anyway. I'm not gonna have a bar service, so it's okay with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Hicks, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah, I think I lost something in the translation there, possibly, but yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to advise him against that.
Okay, we're just saying that alcohol should be served with some food, basically. Not a substantial meal, but if he's offering kind of meze style things, that people need to buy something in order to buy a drink. And I think. Sorry.
I think Amanda was trying to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify: is the capacity 35 going to be 35?
Yeah, including staff.
Including staff.
Yeah.
Including staff. Okay.
Okay. And just one other point on the security SIA supervisors. Could you just speak very quickly about how that's going to operate? So
basically, Mr. Aiken will have to look at, if he starts to think, right, okay, Friday, Saturday night, it's really, really busy out there. I'm having problems with people trying to enter, trying to leave, that sort of thing. Keeping people nice and quiet at the front of his venue is for him to risk assess whether he actually needs an SIA there. And the risk sits with him. So if there's an incident and he's decided to risk assess it and there isn't an SIA there and the police come along and assess it and say you should really have had an SIA, then obviously it sits with him to receive some level of enforcement from the police, for example. But the risk sits with him. It's for him to assess. So there won't be a routinely, the routine of having SIA at the front of the premises permanently. It literally is on a risk assessment basis.
Yeah. Councillor Patrick, I know that you had concerns in the past with other
Yeah,
applications in regards to SIAs and things. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I can understand the risks of Mr. Engine, but and he takes the flak for his flak from the police, but that doesn't really deal with any issues that happen on the night, so to speak. I mean, so as we've been told by other bar and restaurant owners, you just can't conjure up an SIA door supervisor out of thin air once something happens, and they have to be booked in advance. So I do wonder whether there ought to be some condition about having SIA doing the risk for Fridays and Saturdays.
Can I say, Chair, in answer to that, you've just conditioned it pretty much as a restaurant. Mr. Aiken has decided that, yes, he accepts that it will be a restaurant, people seated, eating a meal with their alcohol.
Yeah.
They're just, show me a restaurant that has SIA standing at the door. And the other issue would be that if you insist that he has to have SIA, we're looking at trying to find a company that will, bearing in mind our hours, bearing in mind, by 12:30 everyone's out and out the door. We're then looking at trying to find an SIA company that provide a guard for 3 to 4 hours on a Friday, Saturday night. It just wouldn't happen. Commercially, it's not actually practical. And in answer to Councillor Patrick's concerns with regards to, what if it happens there and then, if something kicks off there and then, they're all quite friendly licensees, when they're packed in together. And I know that Earth will have their own door supervisors literally on top of his venue. And I'm quite confident. I'm looking at Mr. Aiken now, and I'm sure he's quite confident that if, and I mean it's a big if now, certainly now it's a restaurant, something did happen inside his venue, he knows an awful lot of the licensees in that area. They would assist him should it come to that. But I sincerely believe it's a big if, and certainly now you've conditioned it as a restaurant as such. This is not a bar; it's a restaurant. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. So I think we've kind of we've had the discussion phase now.
Chair, Amanda did want to come in. I don't know if she still does. I know you can't.
Sorry, Amanda, didn't see.
I'm only telling you because I know you can't see people on your screen.
No, thank you.
It's okay. I think Mr. Hicks has covered the point about Fridays and Saturdays, because I think that's something that you wanted to maybe consider what the SIA position was for Fridays and Saturdays, and I think he's explained it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patrick, for reminding me there. Okay, so closing remarks then, I suppose. So if we can, Mr. Chewett, if you'd like to come in and just respond to what you've heard.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the premises is, as has been discussed within the Dalston SPA, and I've heard that the amendments to the application, that does go some way to allay the concerns, and I think with the alcohol sales being accompanied by food, or food being accompanying alcohol, that goes some way to allay the concerns by changing the nature of the premises. And also, I think some reference was made to a revised plan. Is that?
Yes, there was.
Still going to happen?
Mr. Hicks, can you provide a new plan?
Yes. No, we will obviously ensure that there's a correct plan provided should the application be successful, which will show exactly what it needs to show.
Okay, great. Okay, so Mr. Hicks, you might want to. Are you finished? Sorry, David.
Yeah, no, that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Chair. So, just to very briefly summarise, it's the barbers. There's nobody there at the moment. We're going to bring some jobs. You've heard there's going to be 5 or 6 people employed. We're sticking within core hours. We've obviously now turned it from a bar where food's available to pretty much a restaurant. And Mr. Chewett said that's the lady's fears. Prior to that, we didn't have any representations from the police or any other authority. And certainly, I think it's worthy of note that in that area, the residents are quite militant in relation to licensed premises. And we've heard nothing from any of those, no representations from them at all. The offer that's on the plate there, pardon the pun, is very different to what's on offer in many of the other venues within Dalston. It's certainly not a destination venue. We're not going to try and bring extra people in. We're going to try and mix some trade from the venues around us. And I think that's pretty much it, Chair. I mean, it's quite a robust set of conditions, etc., there, which I hope will allay any fears that you did have. And I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic, great. So any points of final clarification that we need to make? Anybody? Councillor Patrick, are you content?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Great. I think I've heard all I need to hear. Okay, great. So if we could just ask you guys to leave, and then we will consider the case. And I believe you can phone in tomorrow to find the result.
Thanks ever so much, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all. Keep safe.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Cheers,
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.